it's Claire Aiken with the Fiddle-leaf Fig Plant Resource Center, and thank you so much for joining me today for the Ultimate Fiddle-leaf Fig Care webinar. Today, I'm going to give you everything I know about how to keep your fiddle-leaf fig green and gorgeous. I'm going to answer the most common questions that I get that relate to 90% of the problems that people have with their fiddle-leaf figs and how to solve those problems. And then I'll give you tons of resources for how to learn more and how to answer specific questions about your plant. And so it's my goal to really empower you today with the tools to have an amazing relationship with your plant, to have a beautiful plant that can last for generations and that won't give you any problems or won't make you feel bad. And so I hope I answer all your questions. I'm going to move really quickly because you can always pause the webinar, you can always watch the replay, and so I'm going to try to just give you as much information as possible, and then you can always watch the replay or ask us questions if I didn't address exactly what's going on with your plant. So thank you so much for joining us. Let's get started. Thank you for taking the time to join me today. I'm Claire Aiken for the Ultimate Fiddle-leaf Fig webinar, and I am with the Fiddle-leaf Fig Plant Resource Center. I'm really excited that you have invested today in your relationship with your plant, and hopefully I'll give you some really good tips and tricks to have a more fulfilling and a better relationship with your plant. So I want to take a moment to welcome you to the Fiddle-leaf Fig Plant Resource Center. We have a website. We have weekly email tips that are only about fiddle-leaf figs. So everything you've ever wanted to know about this plant, join our mailing list. We also have a Facebook group that has over 20,000 people. So if you're having specific problems with your plant, that is the best place to go. You can post pictures, you can ask questions. There are tons of experts that will help you with your plant and offer recommendations. We also have a YouTube channel that publishes every Fiddle-leaf Fig Friday. And so subscribe to us on YouTube and you can watch all of our latest videos and ask your questions, and we'll create videos specifically to answer your questions. We have the Fiddle-leaf Fig store that you can click to shop our items, and we also have a great Fiddle-leaf Fig feed on Instagram, so check us out and follow us there. So I just want to give you a little bit about my story and my passion. So I grew up writing and growing roses with my mom and my grandmother. My grandmother was huge into houseplants. She actually had a fiddle-leaf fig back in the 70s before they were popular, and she had all kinds of beautiful houseplants. And so I think that's really where I got my houseplant passion. And my mom is an amazing rose grower, and so she has this incredible rose garden, and so that's where I got my outdoor gardening passion. My two little girls are my passion. You can see them there. And so I'm just really a houseplant lover, a plant lover in general, and I really got into fertilizers. That's my specialty. And so I learned everything that I possibly could about plant fertilizers, both for indoor and outdoor plants, and I'm a lecturer at UCLA Extension. So it's my mission to really empower you to care for your fiddle-leaf fig with confidence. So when I first started with these plants, I got a little bit overwhelmed because when I went online, there wasn't easy to follow advice. It was all kind of overcomplicated. I couldn't find a straight answer to common questions. And so I really wanted to cut through the noise and give people an easy, fun, and actionable way to improve the health of their plant. And so it's my mission today to share with you everything I know about fiddle-leaf figs, to fix the most common issues that people have, and to share easy propagation methods because it took me years to get started propagating my fiddle-leaf fig, and it's actually really easy and really rewarding. And so I want to help you enjoy your plants more and just to have fun in general because, why do we have houseplants if they're not going to bring joy into our lives? And so I created the Fiddle-leaf Fig Resource Center because I believe in the power of houseplants. So houseplants really do something special for us. So we know that they're good for our environment. We know that they're good for our health. But I think they're also good for our confidence and our the way that we think about ourselves and the way that we nurture each other. It's just such an amazing relationship to grow a plant and to keep it healthy and to listen to it and to watch it and to use your intuition. And I think that the more that you grow houseplants, the more confident you become, not only in growing houseplants, but also outside in other areas of your life. And so I really want to simplify confusing information and help new growers because we know that 90% of people who get a fiddle-leaf fig, that's their first houseplant, and it's not necessarily the easiest plant to start with, and so they often face a lot of problems. And it's my fear that people buy a fiddle-leaf fig, they face problems, and they give up on houseplants forever. I don't want that to happen, and so I want to make things as easy as possible, especially if you're a new grower, and just hopefully have you have a really good outcome and have a lifelong relationship with plants that gives you a lot of joy. So before I get started, I want to give you a coupon to save 20% on your entire order. You don't have to buy our products, but we did create them specifically for Fiddle-leaf figs. We really put a lot of love and care into all of our products. We have all kinds of specialty houseplant products, but specifically products for Fiddle-leaf figs, a fertilizer, a root rot treatment to treat the most common problem, which is root rot, which is brown spots or dropping leaves, a leaf armor spray, all kinds of things. There's a book, The Fiddle-leaf Fig Expert, that I wrote, a Fiddle-leaf Fig moisture meter. And so if you do need supplies for your plant, save 20% on everything. You can just click below to use this coupon. So first, I want to talk about just houseplants in general. They are mysterious and wonderful. And so, like I said, they do something special that isn't, necessarily intuitive. And so more than, making our spaces beautiful and purifying the air, they also have a strange and mysterious connection with us. And one of the ways that I like to show this is this Ikea plant video. And so what Ikea did, and there's a lot of experiments, along the same lines as this, but what Ikea did is they actually put two plants that are exactly the same plant in exactly the same growing conditions right next to each other. And they had one plant be bullied. So people said terrible, mean things to it. It didn't get any love. It didn't get any appreciation. And then the other plant was complimented. So people said nice things and were positive to it. And the results are astounding. No one really knows how this works, but it's been demonstrated over and over with different studies and different experiments. But houseplants have a power to feel the feelings and the intentions that we put towards them. And so I think it's just so incredible that if we take care of our plants, they take care of us, and it's this mystical relationship. And so I ask that you open your mind and you just consider that maybe there's something going on that we're not necessarily fully aware of how it works, but it definitely works, and it's just a really incredible gift. So let's answer your first question. So are fiddle-leaf figs really hard to grow? People will tell you they're hard to grow, and I think it's just people believe that because they're so beautiful and stunning that they couldn't possibly be easy, but they are easy to grow. This is a picture of this giant fiddle-leaf fig that's growing free and happy in the wild with no fertilizer, no water, just, it's growing, and it's huge, and it's over 30 feet tall. So there's a lot of conflicting advice online of people trying to tell you that it's hard to grow a fiddle-leaf fig. Houseplant gurus try to overcomplicate the subject for some reason. But even in San Diego, they grow 60 feet tall in the wild. I've seen at Disneyland, they have several giant fiddle-leaf figs, and that's Anaheim. It's not really a nice environment for houseplants, right? It's dry, it's arid, and so they can grow in a variety of conditions to be huge and to be healthy. And so the first thing I would just want to get out of, your block to growing a healthy fiddle-leaf fig is that they're not that hard to grow. If you give them the right conditions, they will do really, really well. And so let's just talk about sort of the challenges that we face growing houseplants in general. And so this is something that I like people to understand, a foundational knowledge about houseplants, because while you may think, plants in the wild grow easily and naturally and they grow towards the sun and nature, it should be the same indoors. Well, we actually are facing quite a few constraints indoors. And so the first is that drainage is a problem. So in the wild, plants are growing in the ground and they have unlimited constant drainage that's perfect at any moment in time. And so that means that their roots are never sitting in water, they're never too wet, they're, hopefully not too dry. They just have perfect drainage, especially where fiddle-leaf figs grow in nature, which is in a rainforest where it rains every single day. So they get misted and they get a bath every day and they have perfect drainage. In our house, it's not that easy, right? So in our house, they are watered maybe once a week. They sit in relatively wet conditions for a little bit of time and then they get dried out. So they have to be a bit more resilient. And then they also have a lot lower relative humidity. It's not raining every day in our house. The temperatures are a little bit different. They like to be warm and they like a lot of humidity. And certainly there's a lot less light in most of our homes than in the rainforest. And so this is a challenge. So the biggest challenges for fiddle-leaf figs is drainage and sunlight. Those are the two things. If you can kind of address those two, you will do really well. And just houseplants in general, not to mention outdoors, they're constantly having decaying matter fall. They're having, insects kind of break down the matter. So they're constantly being gently fertilized with organic matter. And so we do need to address that in our indoor conditions as well to give them a gentle fertilization that is something similar to what they would get in the wild. So here's what we're going to cover today. We'll talk about the benefits of your plant. We'll talk about the Fiddle-leaf Fig Care 101. We'll go through the 10 commandments of Fiddle-leaf Fig Care, the secret to proper watering and drainage, common problems and how to treat them, the best fertilizer, propagation strategies, and how to learn more if you want to dig deeper on any of these individual topics. So let's talk about the benefit of your Fiddle-leaf Fig. So obviously they look stunning in your home, and every commercial or designer home that you see on TV has a Fiddle-leaf Fig in it. It's just, they're incredible. There's just nothing better in my opinion. They purify the air. In fact, they may purify the air better than any other houseplant. And so they do an incredible job of removing toxins from the air and releasing pure oxygen. I have a whole video on that if you're interested on our YouTube channel. They increase the relative humidity of your home, which is good for, people with asthma or allergies, or, if you have a sore throat. Humidity and purified air are the things that are going to help you feel better. They reduce illnesses. They improve your mood. They boost productivity at work or in your home office. They bring good luck, I think, and they create less stress and greater happiness in your life. And so putting one of them in your home, especially in an area that you spend a lot of time in, is really a way to improve your quality of life. So great books about houseplants. I love to read, and I hope you do too. And these are some of my favorite books about houseplants. So first of all, the Fiddle-leaf Fig Expert goes through everything you've ever wanted to know about these plants, and that's on the left there. Another really cool book is How to Grow Fresh Air, and this is by a NASA scientist that was tasked with choosing the best houseplants to purify air on the space station. And so it goes through kind of everything you need to know about how houseplants purify air, the toxins that they take out of the air, how to improve your air purification. And it's just this really interesting book. And then we also have a book, Houseplants for Millennials, that has a lot of cool tips and tricks for adding houseplants to your home, using feng shui for plants, designing with houseplants, and then choosing the best plants for your individual rooms within your homes. So let's go over the brief history of fiddle-leaf figs. So like I said, they're native to the rainforest. West Africa and Australia are where they grow natively. They're a member of the mulberry family, which is a family that has over 900 plant species in it. They grow a green fig-like fruit in the wild, and they also have flowers in the wild. And they are a killer in the wild. So they will actually fertilize and germinate, and then they will land on another plant nearby, and their roots will grow all the way down to the ground and strangle the host plant. And so luckily this isn't going to happen in your home, but they are extremely aggressive towards growth and very adaptable to live in different conditions. So I think that's kind of a cool thing about them, is they have a very strong will to live. So the dramatic rise to stardom, it's so interesting to me when I watch shows or movies from, before 1990 or before the 2000s, and there was not one fiddle-leaf fig, but now every Super Bowl commercial, every movie, every show has fiddle-leaf figs everywhere. So the rise to stardom really coincided with Pinterest. So around 2010, Pinterest was launched, and all of a sudden fiddle-leaf figs went just crazy. All of the photography that people saw on Pinterest and the home design blogs featuring fiddle-leaf figs made everyone want one. And so they really broke out around that time, and they've been popular. They've been the #1 selling houseplant ever since. So let's talk about Fiddle-leaf Fig Care 101 to lay the foundation for, if you are a novice grower. So how do plants work? I'll take you right back to high school, back to photosynthesis. And so they take energy from the sun. They need sunlight. And they take in carbon dioxide. They use chlorophyll to synthesize this. They release pure oxygen as well as sugars, and they use those sugars for their own metabolism and growth. So through their roots, they take in water and nutrients to run this whole metabolism. But generally, they need, they need a couple things: energy, carbon dioxide, water. And then they release pure oxygen, and they look beautiful. And so it's a great kind of symbiotic relationship in our homes, since we take in oxygen and expel carbon dioxide. They're the perfect complement to humans. And so let's talk about the anatomy of your plant. So you have your root system, you have your stem and your trunk, and then the leaves, and they all work together to run this plant metabolism. Only plants in the wild typically have flowers and fruit, and those are used for plant reproduction. You need both to reproduce and germinate in the wild. And what's important to know is that your roots really, even though you can't see them, they are critically important to your plant's health. And so you have this spiral of sickness and health where often diseases start in the roots, whether the roots are sitting in water or they get an infection or they're compacted. And then the story is told by the plant's leaves. So you'll see dropping leaves or yellowing leaves or
brown spots on your leaves. And so you want to pay attention to the whole plant when you think about your plant's health. So what do they need to thrive? So first of all, they need lots of light. However much light you can get them, the more the better. They can get sunburnt if they're in direct sun, and we can talk about that a little bit more later. But generally inside your home, they need as much light as possible. They need carbon dioxide, which is no problem in our atmosphere. They need water, but just the right amount, not too much water. So they need a really fast draining soil, because a lot of people don't realize that plant roots not only need water, but they also need air. They actually take in air themselves. And so they need access to both moisture and air through the plant roots. And so a really fast draining, well aerated soil. And we have a soil, if you're interested, it's Fiddle-leaf fig potting soil. You could check it out if you need a really good soil for your plant. And then nutrients, the right mix. And so they need a specific NPK ratio because they are relatively fast growing and they have relatively large leaves. And so our Fiddle-leaf fig plant food is the perfect balance ratio for their growth. And then love and attention. And this is something where, it may sound kind of hokey, but I'm not joking here. They really do need love and attention. And the more you pay attention to your Fiddle-leaf fig, the better it'll do. And I've seen this happen in my own home time and time again. When I get plants and I ignore them, or I don't really care for them as much as my other plants, they don't do as well. My favorite plant happens to be a variegated monstera, and it is the plant that's growing the fastest, that's doing the best in my home. And I look at it every day, and we have this great relationship. And so you'll notice the more love and attention you give to your plants, the better they will do. So let's talk about the 10 commandments of caring for a Fiddle-leaf fig. There's only really 10 things you need to know to become really a master of growing these plants. The first is excellent drainage. They really, really do need good drainage. And so often I see these poor first-time plant owners that take these beautiful plants and put them in a container that has no holes. And people will tell you that this is okay. I don't know why anyone would tell a novice grower, yeah, they don't need drainage, just watch how much you water. That's not true. I've never seen anybody successfully grow a Fiddle-leaf fig in a container with no drainage. So the way you want to do drainage is you want to have an interior pot that has really good drainage and an exterior decorative pot, whether it's a basket or, a beautiful gold pot or whatever it is. So I didn't know that when I started out with houseplants. Somebody had to tell me that. So don't be embarrassed if you didn't know that either. So have the interior pot that's really doing the functionality of your drainage, and then have your pretty exterior container. And then a fast draining soil. This is so important. I had my first Fiddle-leaf fig. I really had a lot of problems with it because I used Miracle-Gro indoor potting soil. And, bless them at Miracle-Gro. They're trying to do a hard job. They're trying to create one potting soil that works for all houseplants. That's next to impossible because ferns like to be, moist all the time. And, there's a lot of plants that like to dry out between watering. So coming up with one soil for every houseplant is impossible. But they did their best, and their soil just holds way too much water for a Fiddle-leaf fig. And so a fast draining soil is a great mix. Our potting soil works really well for aeroids and for Fiddle-leaf figs. So if you have things like monstera, it's going to work really well for that too. It works well for most houseplants, except for things that like to stay really wet, like calathea or like, ferns and things like that. And so it's just important. The way you can do this on your own, if you don't want to buy a specialty soil, take a normal soil like Miracle-Gro indoor potting mix it with half bark or half cactus mix, and that will really lighten it up and help it be aerated and help it drain faster. 3 is don't overwater. And so this is the number one way. I get emails every day from people killing their plants with overwater, and I am a overwaterer. I love my plants so much that I give them too much attention and too much love, and I pour too much water on them. And so this is where a soil meter really comes in, and we make one specifically for Fiddle-leaf figs, but you stick it in the soil and you can tell how wet the soil is down at the root ball. And that's important because, you may think that the top of the soil is dry, but down at the bottom it could still be completely wet. And so you want to test before you water. I recommend watering once a week or less. I have some plants some Fiddle-leaf figs where I water them once a month, some every 2 weeks, and some every week. It depends on the size of the container, depends on how big the plant is, it depends on how well the soil drains. And so once you get to know your plant and your container and your drainage and your soil and where you live and how hot it is, you'll really start to get a good feeling for how fast your plant is going through its water. And a moisture meter really helps to give you a quantifiable number, a 1 to 10 number, where you can say, okay, it's a 6, I'm not going to water until it gets to a 4. And then when it's a 4 or less of moisture, you go ahead and water. And so that really helped build my confidence and my ability to judge how wet the soil looked at the surface by actually getting data from down below the surface. Number 4 is give them maximum indirect light. I talked about this before. If you live in the northern hemisphere, put them in a south-facing large window if you can, so they get most of the sunlight during the day. If you put them in an east or a west-facing window, it's not as good because they just get half a day of sunlight, and in the morning the sun isn't that strong. In the afternoon it may actually be too strong, and so putting them in a south-facing large window is your best bet if you live in the northern hemisphere. However, I do have fiddle-leaf figs where I live in San Diego, and so I have them in a north-facing window, but it's a huge, sliding glass door, and so it's a lot of light. So it just really depends on your home. It depends on what's happening outside of your windows. Do you have an overhang? Do you have a pergola? Or do you have a lot of trees? Generally, you just want to put them in the sunniest place you can find. One interesting thing about light and fiddle-leaf figs is when you first get your plant, they are used to about 50% of full sun. So the greenhouse growing conditions where they grow them, they're getting about 50% sunlight. And so they'll adapt pretty well. It takes them about a month to adapt to different lighting conditions. So what you can do is you can bring your plant home from the nursery, put it in the sunniest location in your house for a month, and then move it to a darker location, and they will adapt. And so that's one trick to getting your fiddle-leaf fig to where you want it to be eventually without having it be too shocked by too much change. Number 5 is treat problems immediately. And so these plants can go downhill in a hurry. If they get root rot, they can drop all of their leaves within a week or two. And it's really scary and it's really sad when it happens. And so with root rot, you really want to jump on it and treat it immediately. We make a root supplement that will stop root rot in its tracks. It works on both bacterial and fungal root rot. So what you're going to want to do generally is repot your fiddle-leaf fig into a fast-draining soil. Treat it with the root rot treatment every 2 weeks until everything looks good and the condition stops. And then treat it once a month going forward to protect it in the future. Number 6 is repot when needed. And so there's a few reasons you would repot your fiddle-leaf fig. So first of all is if you're having any problems with it. So if it feels like it's not draining fast enough, if you have brown spots, if you have dropping leaves, then you're going to want to repot it into a better soil. The second is if it's not growing as much as you'd like and it's root bound. So if it's outgrown its container and it doesn't have enough space, then you're going to want to repot it into a larger container. If you don't want it to grow larger, all you need to do is don't repot it. What you could do is actually top dress the soil. And what I mean there is you just replace the top 3 to 4 inches of soil with new soil. That will give it some nutrients, a little bit better protection, but it won't allow it to grow a lot larger if, say, you're constrained by the space that you have and you don't want new growth. And then, of course, you're going to want to feed them properly. And so our fiddle-leaf fig plant food is designed specifically with an NPK ratio for fiddle-leaf figs. And it's also designed to be super, super gentle. It's a liquid, so it's readily absorbed by the plant's roots. And it's designed to be used every single time you water. This is important for 2 reasons. First of all, you're getting more of a gentle dose of vitamins every time. Like you take a daily vitamin, you wouldn't take a monthly vitamin, right? So you're getting a gentle dose that your plant can easily absorb. You don't have any risk of burning the root system by adding too much fertilizer. That can be really dangerous if you add solid fertilizers, or slow release fertilizers can burn your root system and cause a lot of problems for your plant. So it's designed to be used every time you water. And the other cool thing about that is you don't forget. You don't have to mark your calendar and fertilize every 6 weeks. You just use it. You put in a teaspoon into your watering can every time you water your plant, and you'll get sustained, steady health and growth out of your plant. And check out our reviews if you have any questions. It's a really cool product that we're proud of, and you can buy it on Amazon or click below. And then rotating your plant. So a lot of times I get emails from people with these lopsided plants that are leaning, almost falling over. It's important to rotate them. So, pick how often you water. Maybe it's once a week, maybe it's every 2 weeks. And when you water your plant, you want to inspect it and you also want to turn it maybe a quarter of a turn so that it gets even growth all the way around, like a Christmas tree. You don't want one side to be bare and the other side to look good. You want it to be even. And so I recommend rotating it 1/4 turn every time you water. And then cleaning the leaves. And you would be surprised how important this is for the health of your plant. I was actually just looking at one of my oldest plants today and I realized that its leaves were dusty, and that's why it's not doing so well right now. And so I'm going to wash it off and do a little leaf shine this weekend. And so you have to clean your leaves for a few reasons. Primarily, your plant takes in that carbon dioxide through the stomata or the pores in the leaves, and so we want those to be clear. Secondly, it absorbs light through the leaves, and so dust really, really depletes the amount of light that your plant can absorb. And so rinse it off in the shower or with the hose. If you could take it outside, you can wipe it down with water and a cloth. You don't need to use any cleaners or soaps on it. Just water is really the best thing. And then we also make a leaf shine and protect spray that helps to dissolve some of the dirt on the surface. It helps to keep your plant with higher moisture, so it allows your plant to retain more of its natural moisture, and it's completely natural. It's based on aloe and sea kelp are the main ingredients, and so it helps your plant to kind of have that beautiful glossy finish. It also repels insects, fungus, and bacteria, and then kind of locks in that moisture. A lot like using lotion for your skin, but it's very, very light. And so check out that product if you are somebody who wants kind of a little bit of shine and protection within your plant. Otherwise, I'm not really that big on leaf shine sprays. I just like a clean plant. And so I recommend just cleaning it on a regular basis with room temperature clean water. And then number 10, this is one of my favorite tips, is Fiddle-leaf Fig Friday. Check on your plant every week. So on Friday, I recommend checking on your Fiddle-leaf Fig, inspect it, make sure there's no bugs, make sure there's no holes, no spider mite webs, make sure that it's clean, that it's, maybe stick in a soil meter and see if it's wet or dry. Just see how it's doing, see if there's any brown spots. If there are brown spots, you're going to think about treating it for root rot and removing those damaged leaves. And then just send it some love and, just enjoy your plant once a week. And that is really the key, is consistency and the thoughtfulness that you provide of the care for your plant, is checking on it, bonding with it, and just providing that consistent care each and every week. So the biggest threat to your plant is overwatering. And so if you're going to learn one thing from this webinar, it's please don't overwater your fiddle-leaf fig. It will really do a lot better if you err on the side of too little water. So let's talk about, a lot of people don't know that if they're underwatering or overwatering their plant, because it can be confusing. And if you get a really compacted root ball or soil compaction, you can actually be pouring a lot of water on your plant without any of it getting into the root ball. And so it's important to be able to distinguish the difference. So the plant on the left was left in a hot apartment for, I believe it was like 3 weeks when somebody went on vacation, and it completely dried up. And so you can see the leaves are shriveled, they're crispy, they're dry. That is a dry plant. It probably will not recover. The one on the right is overwatered, and this is the first sign of root rot. And so you can see kind of the black spots at the base of this leaf that dropped. And so the key sign is that, if you overwater your plant, root rot is the first thing that you'll see, which is these, brown spots and black spots and dropping leaves. And so how to tell if you're overwatering? Ask yourself a couple of questions. So do you water more than once a week? If so, I'd say probably your plant is overwatered. Is the soil wet to the touch about 1 inch below the surface? So you could stick your finger or a chopstick in and find out. Do your plant's leaves have dark spots or dark edges? This could definitely signify too much water. And are there flies, gnats, or a musty smell in your plant soil? This is probably means that your plant is way too wet. Think about if you're underwatering. Ask yourself these questions. Are the newest leaves smaller than the existing leaves? This sometimes indicates that your plant has gone through a drought during a growth spurt. And so the new leaves may be small, they may be shriveled. I've done this to my plants accidentally. It happens to everybody, I think, but that's a key, that your plant got too dry during a growth spurt. Are the leaves dry and crispy? This can be caused by thirst or heat or just dryness in your home. Does your plant have yellow leaves? So this can be a sign of underwatering. It also can be a sign of not enough fertilizer, and so it's a little bit tricky there. but that's just one thing to ask yourself. Is the top inch of soil very dry? It's probably thirsty, and then has the soil pulled away from the pot. This means that your plant has gotten really, really dry in the past and the whole soil system has shrunk. And this is what happens a lot of times, and where people get confused is erratic watering, where you overwater your plant and then it completely dries out over the period of a couple weeks and the soil recedes from the container. Then you go to water it again and the soil just goes around the outside of the soil, the root ball in your actual plant is still dying of thirst, but you're watering it, and so you don't understand what's happening. So this is erratic watering, and it's one of these kind of confusing things. What you would do here is you would loosen up the whole root ball and repot your plant. So I would really soak it and repot it and just start over, start fresh, and make sure it doesn't completely dry out in the future. So how to water your plant the right way? So I recommend, and there's a lot of different strategies, use the strategy that works for you. I'll give you a couple different strategies here, but there's two main ways that I water fiddle-leaf figs. First of all, aim for weekly or every 2 weeks. You can always add more, so err on the side of less, and use a soil or a moisture meter until you're confident. And make sure that you have proper drainage and a fast draining soil. And so what I recommend here is the two methods. So the first method is the cup method. And so this means for a small fiddle-leaf fig, you would do 1 cup of water every week or so. This is a great method for beginners because you do not run the risk of overwatering your plant, and it's just easy to be consistent. If your plant is over 2 feet tall, you would do 2 cups of water. If it's over 4 feet tall, you would do 3 cups of water. And then just do that every 1 week and just watch your plant. And that's a great baseline strategy to start with. The other strategy I use is watering until 10 to 15% of the water drains from your pot. And so this means fully watering the root ball and the soil. And so when you do that, then, you're just going to water until it drains from your pot and you know that you've done enough at that watering. But then the variable is going to be how often you water. So you may not water again for 2 weeks or maybe 3 weeks, depending on your soil and your drainage, etc. And so it depends. If you want to be on a consistent watering schedule, I would say go with the 1 cup method. If you want to be on a schedule where you fully water each time, then go with the drainage method, and then just check your plant every week. 1 week, it could be 2, it could be 3, it depends on your plant. And so those are the two methods that I like to teach. And then some people love one and hate the other, and so just go with what makes sense for you. And so let's talk about feeding your fiddle-leaf fig. So why do you need to feed it? So if you want your plant to grow, you do have to feed it. So we talked about the rainforest and how decomposition is constantly giving nutrients to plants. Well, plants, especially fiddle-leaf figs that are confined to a pot, will go through nutrients really, really quickly and end up starving in their pot because they suck up all the nutrients, and there's nothing that's ever going to be added to that if you're not fertilizing your plant. And so it's really important, if you want them to grow, and just if you want them to even stay the same size but be healthy, you still want to fertilize regularly. I recommend feeding every single time you water with our super gentle fiddle-leaf fig plant food because that gives the more steady supply of nutrients. And I actually fertilize year-round for my plants. If you live in a place that has a lot of seasons, we don't really have seasons here in San Diego. It's just always sunny, so my plants grow all year. If you live in a place where it gets really dark, cold winters, then you would maybe suspend your fertilization in the winter dormancy period where your plant isn't getting enough light, and so it's not going to be actively growing, and so it doesn't need those nutrients. So the formula I recommend is the 3-1-2 NPK. And so you could check it out, Fiddle-leaf Fig Plant Food. You could use a different fertilizer if you'd like. Our plant food is, measured, and there's no mixing, there's no measuring, there's no mess. You just squeeze. It has a little flip top. You just squeeze 1 teaspoon into your watering can and water your plant. It's safe to use every time you water. It has the perfect NPK formula, and it's slow release, has added calcium. There's no urea. There's also some sea-based vitamins and minerals in it. And so we've worked really hard on this product, and if it's something that you're interested in, you can save 20% today. Here is some before and afters of this plant growth. And so you can see how fast fiddle-leaf figs grow. In general, they can grow 18 inches in height per year if you give them the proper nutrients. So if you're starting with a small plant and you want it to get big, I recommend fertilizing and just taking some pictures every couple of weeks to see how fast they grow, because it really is amazing. And so check it out on Amazon. If you have any questions, let me know. So the most common fiddle-leaf fig problems, I get emails every day about people that are having problems. And once in a while, I see something I've never seen before, but generally 90% of the problems are the same big problems. And so I'm going to go through those, and I hope it answers any questions or, issues that you're having with your plant. So first of all is root rot. This is by and large the number one thing that we see. And so how to treat and prevent root rot in fiddle-leaf figs is important. So what you're going to see with root rot is brown spots or black areas and dropping leaves. And so you see here that first of all, it can start at the stem and spread, or it can start as spots on your plant, almost like the spots on a Dalmatian, and those spots will spread. And so there's a couple different kinds of root rot, but the treatment is the same. And so it's very common in new plants, particularly how I said, when you bring your plant home from the nursery and you put it in a relatively dark environment, they can drop all of their leaves just in a couple of weeks. And it's totally depressing if you spend a lot of money on a plant and you bring it home and it loses all of its leaves. One thing that I just want to tell you is it's not your fault if this happens to you. These plants that they're selling in nurseries, sometimes it makes me mad. These big box stores grow these plants and they treat them with really strong treatments that are chemicals and fungicides that basically prevent any infection of root rot. And so it's not really fair that as soon as you get your plant home, it's not getting that kind of medication anymore. And so it's extremely susceptible to root rot at the same moment that you bring it home and cut its light maybe in half or maybe more. So all of a sudden it doesn't have any antibiotics anymore and it doesn't have enough light and it can just spiral downhill. And so if this happens to you, don't feel badly about it. It's kind of, set up for failure in some cases. So the way that you can prevent this, when you have a new plant, you bring it home, really be careful not to overwater it and keep it in the sunniest location in your house. And you may even want to give it our root rot treatment as a preventative measure, just to kind of keep it from going downhill during this really critical transitional period. And so here's the different types of root rot we see in Ficus lyrata or fiddle-leaf fig: bacterial, fungal, physical. So you can actually have a physical root rot of just the occlusion of the roots from sitting in water, and your plant will die from that, even if your water is perfectly pure and there's no bacteria or fungus in it. So it is a little difficult to determine the type. I have some blog posts that go through how to identify what type of root rot, but it almost doesn't matter because the treatment's exactly the same. So the typical root rot treatment, has chemicals, fungicides, and toxic and hazardous materials. I don't know about you, but I don't want those in my home. I don't really want them on my plant. I have 2 little babies and a 3rd baby on the way, and I don't want toxic things in my home. And so we developed our root rot treatment to be completely natural, no harsh chemicals. It has plant-derived ingredients. It treats fungus and bacteria, and it works with your plant to boost your plant's natural immunity. So if you're looking for a natural solution that really works with the health of your plant, check out our root rot treatment. I really think it's a good supplement that helps to give your plant that defense that it needs against root rot. And I use it on all my plants every time I water just to keep them healthy. So if you're interested in that, there's a link below to save 20%. The next thing that we see is red spots on fiddle-leaf figs. And this one's really kind of cool. I'm always happy when people ask me about this, because what it is it's these tiny red spots on new growth for your fiddle-leaf fig. And so here's what they look like. You can see it looks pretty terrible, actually. You have this great new growth spurt and you're so excited, and then they're mottled by this like red spots and it looks like they're being damaged. It's fine. There's nothing to worry about. They're not going to fall off. It's completely normal. What it is it's a bursting of the cells of your plant due to basically too much water while they're growing. It's better to give your plant too much water while it grows than too little, because if you give it not enough water during the growth spurt, it can lead to that stunted growth that we talked about earlier. So with these, you just don't need to do anything. They'll fade as your leaf grows, and it's a good sign if you have new growth. It means your plant's happy and healthy. So just don't worry about these and keep, taking pictures each day, and you'll see them fade. The next thing is insect problems. And so insects, are common on fiddle-leaf figs in certain areas of the country, especially in the South. And so you just want to be aware of these. The telltale sign for insects is holes in the leaves, or you can see the actual insect activity. So you can see flies or bugs or spider mites or the webs of spider mites. And so you just want to keep an eye and physically inspect your plant to make sure that you don't have insect activity. And we also have a product for insect treatment on fiddle leaf figs if you're interested. That's our leaf armor product. And so sunburn is another thing that we see quite a bit. Especially during the summer, people put their fiddle leaf figs outside, which is a great idea. If you live in a nice, warm climate, you can easily put your fiddle leaf fig outside, but put it in the shade because they do get sunburnt if you put them in full sun. There are ways of acclimating them to full sun over time, so you could do that, but if you take it from indoors and put it directly in full sun, they will get sunburnt, and unfortunately, these leaves will not recover, and so it's kind of a bummer, but you'll need to remove these leaves, and you could just see kind of the telltale tanning or sunburn on those leaves. Holes in the leaves. So if you have holes in your leaves, first of all, check for insects because that's a common problem. But it also can just be caused by trauma. So moving your plant from the nursery, what happens is they get bruised, and then over the period of a couple days or a week, those bruises kind of, harden up into scabs and eventually into holes. And so sometimes you don't realize if it's a really windy day and your plant gets a lot of wind, if it's on your balcony, say, it can get physical trauma that a week later can actually be a physical hole in the leaf. And so people think, oh no, I have insects. Well, it may be that your plant was physically traumatized earlier and that this is just kind of the scar that it's left. And so it's no big deal if you see holes like these that aren't spreading, that don't have root rot, that don't have insect infestation. You can remove the leaf if it bothers you, but it just happens. They have such big leaves that sometimes they get physical trauma. So the most important trick to helping your fiddle leaf fig thrive: bonding with your plant. And so we talked about this a little bit earlier, but I really encourage you to name your plant. This is a game changer. Once you name your plant, it will all of a sudden start having a better relationship. It'll be healthier. It'll be happier. I have fiddle leaf figs that I still haven't named. I don't know why. And they're never the healthiest plants. They're never doing well. I have Goose. I have Clive. I have all kinds of fiddle leaf figs, Fig Newton, Figgy Smalls. There's just so many cute fiddle leaf fig names. Check out our Facebook group for a list of the top names. But if you name your plant, it really does something special to help you remember to water it, to bond with it, and to just really create that relationship that is going to be super rewarding for both of you. And so if you're interested in more advanced techniques like propagation, I just want to give you a little bit of information here because sometimes it sounds scary, but like propagating your plant, I've never done that. It sounds intense. I don't know if I want to get into that. I would encourage you just to give it a try. And so here's how to propagate just in a nutshell. And I have a whole video on everything you'd ever want to know about fiddle leaf fig propagation, but you cut off a healthy stem section of your fiddle leaf fig. And you may be doing this anyway if you're pruning your plant or, for a variety of reasons. You use a rooting hormone. We have one. It's called Propagation Promoter. You just drop a few drops into a clean container and you put it in water, and it actually looks really beautiful. You have this beautiful fiddle leaf fig stem coming out of this clear vase of water. It's stunning. And so I think it's cool to do, even if your propagation is not successful. It's still like having cut flowers for a few weeks. And so, but with our rooting hormone, it does protect your cutting from any infestations of bacteria or fungus. So your cutting is more likely to be successful if you use the rooting hormone. So you put a few drops in, you change the water if it gets cloudy. So the reason when you're propagating a plant that the water gets cloudy is from bacteria overgrowth, and that typically happens if it's getting too much sunlight. So don't put your cuttings in direct sun and don't let them get too warm. Otherwise, you kind of get that cloudy water. But don't worry if the water gets cloudy, just change it out. Wait for the roots to form. When the roots for a fiddle leaf fig cutting are about 1 inch long and there's at least a dozen roots, and then you can plant it into a new container in soil and you have a brand new plant. It's so cool. It's such a good way to give away a fiddle leaf fig as a gift or, multiply your own collection if you have plants that are rare or really special to you or, maybe from a relative. Propagating is a great way to have a clone of that plant for free. I am actually part of a propagation group where we take stem cuttings to our quarterly meetings and we exchange them with each other. And it's so much fun because you get to try out new plants. I just got a ZZ plant. I've never had one before. I got a Christmas cactus that way. I got a monstera that way. And so it's just a really fun way to kind of grow your collection and share your plants with friends. So check out how to propagate. I will link to our propagation guide below if you want step-by-step information on that. And then this is our propagation promoter. And so it's really cool to help your cuttings root faster. It's specifically developed for fiddle-leaf figs. There's multiple rooting hormones within it. There's sea kelp extract to help support strong growth. So there's all these cool basically ingredients to help improve your outcome with propagation so that your cuttings don't fail. So check that out if you're interested. And so here's my video, everything about fiddle-leaf fig propagation. It goes deep, you guys. It is, I think it's like 30 minutes long, and it talks about everything you've ever wanted to know. So if you're into propagation, check it out. Let me know if you like it. So if you want to learn more about any of these topics, we will link everything below, all of our resources and other people's resources as well. You can always buy the Fiddle-leaf Fig Expert book on Amazon. It goes through everything you need to know in depth, tips and tricks, pruning, shaping, cleaning, everything. And as a special guest to you for making it this far in the webinar, I want to give away our free Fiddle-leaf Fig course. And so this has video, it's a video course, it's self-paced, you can go through it at your own pace, and it talks about everything from fighting root rot naturally, aeration, repotting, pruning, propagation, notching, which is trying to encourage new branches on your plant, troubleshooting problems, treating brown spots, everything. And so click below for your free lifetime access to the Fiddle-leaf Fig course. We spent like almost a year creating it, and it's hours and hours of videos that you can go through at your own pace. So I hope it's helpful to you if you're interested in all of those topics. And then, of course, you can click to shop the Fiddle-leaf Fig store and get any of our products at 20% off today. And so you can save big on your order. If you want to buy one item, you can get 10% off. 2 items, you get 15. And if you buy over 3 items, you can save 20% on everything. So go to fiddleleaffigplant.com/shop. And then if you enjoyed this webinar, if it was helpful, or if you learned one thing from it, all I ask is that you share it on Pinterest. That's really the way that helps us the most, is if you pin it on Pinterest, then other people can discover it and watch it. And that's how we get most of our new exposure. And so if it was helpful to you, and I hope it was, please just thank us by pinning on Pinterest. We would really, really appreciate it. So thank you so much for joining us. You can ask a question in the chat box. You can share this webinar. You can follow us on our Facebook group. That's really the best way to get answers. If I haven't answered your question, pop on over to the Facebook group and upload a picture of your plant, and you will get tons of responses there. Pinterest, we have tons of tips and tricks. Instagram, we post beautiful pictures for Fiddle-leaf Fig Friday. And of course, you can browse all of our videos on YouTube. I really appreciate you taking the time to watch this video, and I hope it was helpful. I hope you learned something, and I wish you years of happy growing. Thank you so much for watching.